folks, thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you to our folks that showed up tonight. Today we're going to be discussing inflammation and how healthy foods and stress can cause and exacerbate inflammation. This is a very topical subject. Many people are worried about the coronavirus as well as many other health issues that are happening. So I'd like to address what we can do to make ourselves better and stronger. And this is a lead-in to next week's topic, which is inflammation and depression. Leading on that, depression currently is only being addressed by two main factors here in America and in fact in the rest of the world, which is we're dealing with the serotonin model, right? So we take antidepressants when we are depressed and we go into therapy. And those are both very efficacious things that can be used. But if we're not addressing the whole system, one is always at risk for suffering from depression and or anxiety. But the first thing that's important to understand is inflammation and how inflammation affects us all. Right, so when we think of inflammation, we normally think of, I scrape my finger and my body does what the immune system is supposed to do, and it fights the inflammation, and then I get better. That is what a healthy inflammatory system will do. But what winds up happening is as we age, we start to lose certain processes, and this inflammatory process can last longer. And when it lasts longer, our body is always going to divert energy from healing to repair. Now, our body is pretty amazing for doing that. I have to say, our body is freaking genius. It is always going to divert energy from the long-term repair to the crisis at hand, right? So if something happens, your body's going to start saying, hey, I'm going to stop repairing the heart, the liver, the lung, your gut, and instead I'm going to deal with this big drama at hand, right? And that's how we have this fine balance between dealing with chronic issues and with immediate issues. But because as we age, we start to lose certain enzymes, certain processes in our bodies start to slow down, this inflammatory response can last for 72 hours. Now, today we're going to address specifically food and how food can affect inflammation and cause premature aging, obesity, and disease. So what I want you to know is that starting around 25, we start to have what I call an inflammatory speed bump. But you're 25 and you still got all sorts of other good stuff going on, and you're kind of strong. So, maybe you notice you're putting on a few pounds, or you're not feeling that great. So maybe you don't eat pizza every day. Maybe you sleep a little bit more, and you're fine, right? That's what happens when you're 25. You start paying a little bit better attention of yourself, I hope. 35, something big starts to happen. That's what I call our first big inflammatory speed bump. For women, it can also be the birth of their first child, definitely the birth of the second child. So what winds up happening is that our systems can start to slow down. Now, if we start to think from a biological and historical fact, most of us were not living beyond the age of 35, right? When we were hunters and gatherers, you made it to 35, you were like the wise person of the village. You made it to 40, like you had 18 grandchildren, right? So our bodies really weren't that well adapted to have us live that long. Are those capabilities there? Absolutely. But do we have to recognize that some of those capabilities slow down and we have to honor them? For sure. So 35 is what I call the first big inflammatory speed bump. There's another one there's 42, big one there's 50. For women there's perimenopause, right? So what winds up happening is we can use foods as an example. Let's say we go back to when you're 25 and you recognize I don't eat pizza every day. You've kind of stopped that inflammatory speed bump. But by the time you're 35, there are 3 foods that you are eating on a regular basis, and these can be healthy foods that they're causing inflammation. Now remember how I said that inflammatory process can last for 72 hours? You could be eating 3 healthy foods like salmon, asparagus, and strawberries just once a week and be in a chronic state of inflammation. Now, if you haven't identified and taken out those strawberries, asparagus, and salmon, by the time you're 42, it's going to be 5 to 6 foods, right? And this is why we start to see so many of our friends and family members, and maybe even ourselves, start to develop diseases like type 2 diabetes, or depression, or heart disease, or arthritis. And once again, if we don't identify what's now those 5 foods at 42, now it's 6 to 7 foods by the time we're 50. Now, what happens when we identify and remove those foods? That's what my work is all about. When you identify and remove those foods, your body stops diverting all that energy from fighting the bad guys, even though what I mentioned are healthy foods, and instead goes back to what it wants to do, which is repair. The exciting thing about being on the plan is that we've been able in weeks to cut insulin off for type 2 diabetics completely, thyroid medication completely, eczema, psoriasis completely, 3 to 4 months chronic depression, putting autoimmune diseases like lupus, multiple sclerosis in remission, cancer in remission. Now, this is all important stuff. This brings up a better question, which is, I was talking about healthy foods, and yet I was saying these healthy foods could cause inflammation. How is that? How can healthy foods make you sick? Right? We've always been taught it's a calorie in and calorie out, and healthy foods make you healthy. How can healthy foods cause weight gain? That makes absolutely no sense. Once again, if I'm eating 100 calories of strawberries or 200 calories of salmon, how can it be that I can gain 1 to 2 pounds? When your body reacts to a healthy food or an unhealthy food, that's your body saying, I love you, please don't eat this. So I came up with a very simple graph right here. Let's see if we can get on most of it for our folks on Facebook. What happens when you eat a healthy food? When you eat a healthy food, and we call that a reactive food, the first thing that happens is a histamine response. And that's what we're measuring on the plan. When you eat a food that doesn't work for your body releases histamine. Now, most of us think of histamine as when you have seasonal allergies, right? Your sinuses start to flare, you start to get a stuffy nose, maybe you get eczema, maybe you get psoriasis, maybe your stomach hurts. That's a histamine response. What we're doing on the plan and on the metabolism plan is measuring how much histamine your body releases in reaction to a food and how much weight gain that causes. So that's why I say when you eat a healthy food and you gain 1 to 2 pounds, that's an inflammatory response, right? Your capillaries are leaking that fluid, and you can measure how much it's impacting you the next day on your scale. So for all of you folks that have been avoiding your scale, I have to tell you, your scale is your best friend. Your scale is going to give you valuable data in the moment about how your body is responding to a food. So once again, we're going to want an accurate scale. So after we have that histamine response, the next thing that happens is we have a cortisol response. Now, I'm sure we've all seen those commercials, right? And they say, oh, cortisol gives you that poochy belly. In fact, it does. What heightened levels of cortisol does is a few things. One, it enacts long-term fat storage. So now that 100 calories of the strawberries that you ate is now staying on as actual weight gain. It's just not that histamine response. But what heightened levels of cortisol does is a couple of nasty things. You know, my work is all about helping you understand how stress affects you. And once again, we're going to talk about, in next week's session, about coronavirus, how stress will literally deplete your immune system. We're going to touch upon that today. But whenever you have heightened levels of cortisol, I want you to know, one, you're going to be more stressed out, right? So that same worker that kind of got on your nerves yesterday, you had the strawberries today, now you want to kill them, right? You're also putting on weight, but what cortisol does is it also skews your hormones. And this is a big problem, not just here in America, but all over the world. So those skewed hormones In men, it's going to shunt testosterone production, and this is for you folks. And I'll do a pictorial tomorrow so you can actually see it all together. In men, it's going to shunt testosterone production, and for most women, it's going to shunt progesterone production, making us estrogen dominant. That's one of the big reasons why there's such an issue with breast cancer and fibroids and hormonal imbalance. Whenever we start to skew our hormones, we're saying, especially for women, we've all been there, right? I'm poochy, I'm irritable, and I'm craving carbs, which sets up its whole other host of issues, right? So these skewed hormones are going to make us more depressed, they're going to make us crave unhealthy foods, and it's going to do two things. It's going to affect our thyroid. Our thyroid is not only our master gland for our metabolism, but our thyroid is also responsible for every metabolic and cellular function. When we say to the thyroid, you're not working, you're more depressed, you're gaining weight, and you're packing on the pounds. So we really need to address this. So let's just go over very quickly what happened from eating those strawberries, assuming strawberries don't work for your body. You have short-term water weight gain, you have long-term weight gain, you're more stressed out, your hormones are imbalanced, you're depressed, but folks, the fun doesn't stop there. No, it doesn't, because we start to kick up yeast when all of this is happening. Now, many people have heard that they suffer from an overgrowth of yeast, that they have candida. Yeast can easily mimic 250 diseases. Yeast can make you incredibly depressed. Yeast can make you crave the worst foods. Yeast can make you feel like your worst self. But what yeast does, yeast is an integral part of our gut function. Men have yeast, women have yeast. When we start to cause an uptick in yeast, what winds up happening is we start to disrupt our microbiome, our gut function. Now, our gut is not only the seat of our immune system. They say anywhere from 70 to 90% of our immune system is due to our gut, but also 70 to 90% of serotonin, our feel-good hormone, is in our gut. So we're, obviously we know, like I would say, you know, I'm not going to vilify the Franks and the nachos. You know, you're not eating that saying, hey, I expect to be vitally healthy and the happiest person I can be. And weirdly enough, sometimes Franks and nachos do work out for people, and they're cutting it out, and they shouldn't be. But what is a problem is when you're plugging in these healthy foods, and they're not working for your body, and you're wondering why you're getting sicker, why you're more depressed, why you're craving the wrong foods, and you're beating yourself up because your body's not responding. All I have to say is if you're eating healthy foods most of the time and your body isn't responding, it's because that healthy food isn't working for you. And what the plan and the metabolism plan is all about is about discovering what works for your body. So there's no such thing as a healthy food. I'm going to tell you right now. There's no such thing as a universally healthy food. And there's no such thing as a universally unhealthy food. What there is there are foods that work for your body. The work that I do is somewhat similar to the Weizmann Institute in Israel. And they do what we do, is we monitor people's weight, their blood sugar, their blood pressure, their stress response, multiple factors. And they have found, just like I have found, is that there are some people, like my grain baby right here, when Tara doesn't eat enough, grain baby, and if she doesn't eat enough carbohydrates, she puts on weight. She needs to eat way more than most people and needs to eat lots of bread for her body to be happy. That's her. I have clients that every time they eat ice cream, they lose weight. Now, there are going to be other people that eat ice cream and gain weight. So I wouldn't say to take Tara's diet and follow it, and I wouldn't say to take Kim's diet and follow it. I personally cannot eat a bean to save my life. And as a former vegetarian vegetarian and vegan for 20 years, I miss my beans, but my body hates them, and I'm not going to try to eat a healthy food and cause inflammation for my body. That's not honoring my body, and that's not being healthy for the planet or for myself. And I always say that kindness starts with yourself first. And when you start with yourself and your base is strong, then you can go out and make the world a better place. Sort of like that, in the airlines when they say, I don't care about your kids, grab that mask first. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So once again, when we start going into thyroid and yeast, we're going to talk about gut function, which we just addressed, and the immune system. Now, obviously, there's a lot that's going on right now, and there's a lot of scare about the coronavirus. I was going to, the first Wednesday of every month, I do talk specifically about inflammation and depression, but I think with so much discussion that's going on around the coronavirus, I wanted to say that right now is the time, it's always the time to eat the foods that are healthiest for you. But right now, more than ever, I've never seen a season where people have been so sick for so long, for so often. And the pathways which people are getting sick are very interesting. This has been a season that I've seen more than any other season where lung function is very much affected. And the coronavirus is working by attacking two main pathways, your lung function and your gut function. So what I'm hoping everyone does is to follow the plan, the metabolism plan, to find the foods that work for their bodies so we can strengthen our lung function, our gut function, but also to work on strengthening lung function. So how do we strengthen lung function? Obviously, people that have asthma and pre-existing conditions are going to be more at risk. MSM is one of my favorite supplements. With MSM, we've been able to put acid reflux and asthma in complete remission, just doing that for 6 weeks. And you'll read about MSM if you, my Facebook and Instagram friends, just look MSM on the book. It's all in my books, of course. But if you can just Google MSM on my Facebook or on Instagram, you'll see we use MSM for so many diseases, autoimmune disease, asthma, acid reflux. It's amazing stuff. And what it does is it acts like a shield, it acts like a barrier to protect your body from something that doesn't work for you. So MSM is going to be our first line of defense. When you're doing the plan, you should be doing that for 6 weeks. My favorite lung healing herbs are 3. Slippery elm is amazing. That's often used in Native American healing, sometimes also in Russian healing. Once again, like MSM, what it does, and many of the foods that we have on the plan, it releases what's known as a mucilage. And mucilage is a gummy-like substance. So imagine this is the mucosa of your lung, and then now we have this nice gummy barrier. It's almost like a moat. So you can have all these allergens trying to hit you, but you've got this nice barrier of the mucilage from the slippery elm. So what that's going to do is, and I liken this to, hey Marty, what's going on? Julie, Crystal, good to see you guys. Imagine you've scraped your finger. Remember how we talked about the immune system and when you scrape your finger and how there's inflammation, and inflammation goes to heal that scrape? If you keep scraping your finger, that finger's never going to heal, right? But if we have a nice barrier of mucilage, you might be exposed to that scrape, but it can't get through the scrape. So what winds up happening is that mucosa, your lungs, are allowed to heal. When we're talking about the coronavirus, or we're talking really about anything with lung function, when we can allow tissue to heal, it's going to repair, because that's what your body always wants to do. Remember though, the way I was saying, if it feels like it's being affected by an external allergen, it's not going to heal. So slippery elm is a great herb. Marshmallow, I know we think of those disgusting marshmallows for s'mores. That's not what I'm talking about. Marshmallows in actual. Marshmallow is a great herb. Mullein leaf is a great herb. There are a bunch, but those are the main ones that I use. And what I have folks do is rotate them. So what we want to do, obviously for our best health, but especially in this age where we're worried about the coronavirus, is making sure our lung health and our gut function are optimal. Zinc is something that you can take every single day. Take it on a full stomach. 30 milligrams when you're starting to feel yucky every few hours works really, really well. Vitamin C is also really wonderful. Many of us take echinacea, but I have to use a caveat with echinacea is that your body can build up an adaptability to it very, very quickly. So it's not something you want to take every single day. You would want to take echinacea maybe for a month, right? While we're worried about this virus affecting us to build up our immune system. Osha is another great herb, specifically for lung function. And vitamin A, now vitamin A we need to be concerned about because vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. So it's not something you want to take every day because then you can build up toxic levels of vitamin A. But when we're worried, hey Paul, let's see who's on there. Hey Julie, is that Judy or Julie? Sorry, my glasses aren't on. I'm blind as a bat, even with these contact lenses. Vitamin A has been shown to fight super viruses like herpes, like AIDS. So we might want to take that for a month while we're bolstering our immune system or potentially susceptible to this virus. It does seem to be getting more serious. I did notice that the CDC, hey Katie, what's going on, sweetie? Elderberry, great question, Katie, thank you for bringing up elderberry because I forgot about that. Elderberry is amazing. When everybody was worried about the avian flu, they were testing it. Most of the studies were done in London, maybe about 10 years ago, but they did find that elderberry extract was able to fight the avian flu and about 10 strains of some pretty serious flus. So that would be something that would be really wonderful for, oh Tina, you're so sweet. That would be something that would be really wonderful to keep on hand and maybe start supplementing with it now. I really do think now, with the potential of exposure, we should be thinking about a 4 to 6 week period of ramping up our immune system. Today, the CDC released that we should always have 2 weeks of food on hand and 2 weeks of medicines on hand, especially things like cold medicines, because we don't know if what we're going to be exposed to is the cold or the flu. Definitely keep your medical records on hand. Now's a good time to get them from your doctor. If you did, we could potentially have a very overloaded medical system. So we just want to have everything with your health history last 10, 15 years. So if we're working out with a stressed out system, we can help the doctors and nurses that are helping us out with a very detailed, elaborate self-history, health history. Hi Connie, how are you doing, sweetie? So we kind of transmogrified what was just going to be a basic talk about immune function, inflammation, and how the plant can help build you a better immune system and keep disease, obesity, and aging at bay. But because I have people from all over the world emailing me asking for concrete advice, this is what I can offer you. Now there's one thing more that I've been using for, hi Laura, how are you, sweetie? That I've been using with great results, and people have been mentioning it to me for a while, and I was kind of leery about it because it's an MLM company and they can always be a little bit dodgy, but I decided after doing the research to see if it worked for me, and this is NRF1 and NRF2. These work on a mitochondrial and cellular level to remember I was talking about how as we get older, we lose certain processes? This NRF1 and NRF2 kind of take us back 20 years. I found personally for me that it's really greatly enhanced energy levels, healing, and cognitive function. For other people, they've repaired from injuries faster. For other people, they've noticed an abatement of depression or joint pain. But when it comes specifically to us being worried about the coronavirus or any virus, our mitochondria are one of our first lines of defense when it comes to us being attacked. And because the mitochondrial process really slows as we age, anything that we can do to boost that allows us in this time of a particular stressor to use it. So would you use NRF1 or NRF2 for forever? Maybe not. Might it be a good idea to use right now in conjunction with these herbs that we're talking about? Probably. The links are on my Facebook page. You can look into it. You can certainly email me about it. I can send you all the research. The mitochondrial response, specifically to viruses, has been well researched, medical journal after medical journal. So it is something, if you are concerned about it, you might want to look into. So anyway, who do we have on there? Sep. Hi, let's go. Oh, hey, Sep from Atlanta. How are you? I wanted to open up the floor to any questions that we might have. I know we have some people. Yes, Sam, what would you like to say?
You said you identified the response. How does it show up?
That's a very great question. When you go through the plan, you'll actually see it happen on a bio-individual basis. So what wound up happening is when I first started the basic work of the plan, it was 2007. I had a little holistic health center on 128th Street here in Harlem. And the prevailing theory at that time was that obesity caused inflammation. But what I started to see in real time was that people's inflammatory responses to food was causing obesity and was triggering whatever was latent in their health profile. So if you had a predisposition to migraines and you ate an inflammatory food, you'd gain 2 pounds and you'd get a migraine. If it was depression, you'd gain 2 pounds and you have depression. Not because you were stepping on the scale and seeing 2 pounds, right? If it was joint pain, you would have joint pain. If it was constipation, it'd be constipation. Conversely, when we took away these foods, people started to heal very rapidly. So I don't know if you remember me saying that insulin and type 2 diabetes, which is a huge problem not just here in Harlem, but nationally. People are deciding, do I eat or do I buy my insulin? If we can cut insulin by as much as 50% in 1 week by eating low inflammatory foods for their bodies, we're obviously taking off not only the pressure of them being able to eat more healthy and nourishing foods, but taking that stressor off of saying, what do I do? Do I eat or do I die? I mean, it's horrible. So what I did was, based on my findings, I wound up hiring a staff of doctors and nurses who still work with me today, and we started to say, okay, what's the research that we're seeing that is validating the responses that we're seeing? And I'm very happy to say that at this point, the plan is being recommended by hundreds of doctors in the United States, as well as hundreds, if not thousands, all over the world, because while we don't have the funding to do the research so that we can go in the journals, the anecdotal research that we're seeing is amazing. I'm dealing with somebody right now who had just been on the plan for 9 days, and her lymphatic system has healed so much. Her doctor has just said, whatever you're doing, you need to rush and do this right now. And he went into this thinking that it was hippie hoo-ha. So, and that's the interesting thing about studies. You're always going to find a study to believe, to uphold what you believe in. Right? Studies are inherently flawed. Studies are backed by many companies. At the end of the day, you're going to have to take whatever research or data it is that you read and apply it to yourself. And as I always say in the plan, if something works for 99.99% of the clients that we work with, and you're the 0.01 and it doesn't work, that's fine, because this is not saying you need to do this. What it is it's a testing protocol for you to understand how your body responds, and your body is unique. Your brother, your sister, your mother, that's fine, you're related, but it's never going to be exactly the same, and you need to determine what works for you to have your optimal health. Yes?
One is, it seems like it would show up quicker or more obvious to somebody with some illness. For me, it's a thing of chronic illness.
Actually, that's a really good, because so Sam asked, it seemed that it would respond more quickly to somebody that has a chronic illness. I'm actually not going to say, Sam, that's not actually the case, because we all have our thing, right? Whether it's a mood disorder or whether it's irritability. I'm not saying that chronic pain is not more serious. It's debilitating. But everybody, pretty much over the age of 25, is going to have something that is their worst fear. And that's what an inflammatory food is going to do. What I do find with people that have chronic illness and have had it for a longer period of time is that they might have more foods that they're sensitive to. So when we start off with the plan, for those of you folks who don't know the plan, we start off with a 3-day food-based cleanse. And as a woman, you're eating over 2,000 calories a day. As a man, you're eating over 2,800 calories a day. But there could be anywhere from 5 to 15 pound weight loss in those days. These are the least inflammatory foods. And what that does is, because we've reduced all of this inflammation, your body speaks louder than it has ever spoken to you before, saying no. So I remember there was this one woman who wrote on Facebook. She and I didn't work together. She saw me on Dr. Oz. She read the book, and she decided to do the plan. And she lost 14.4 pounds in 6 days, and decided to test wheat. And rather than testing the way that we recommended, she tested for Triscuits. Now, Triscuits are a hot mess because they have soybean oil. No, the soybean oil. Woo! So this woman not only gained 3 pounds from 4 or 5 Triscuits, but she had to be rushed to the hospital for asthma. Now, here's an interesting thing. She'd never had asthma before. Her body, after having all of this lessened inflammation, was saying, whoa, bad guy, super alert. So the same thing will happen. We go through so much of our day just feeling less than stellar. We're always slightly tired or depressed or joint ache or whatever. And when you go through that cleanse, you're like, whoa, this is amazing. This is me remembering me at my best. Then you introduce that inflammatory food. Your body says loud and clear, this is not working. Now the good news is, the way I've developed the plan, Sam, is that I would never allow you to test something that might potentially be highly inflammatory for you. So that woman who tested the Triscuits didn't follow our testing protocol. I would never let you test something like salmon or Greek yogurt or turkey or asparagus or cauliflower or oatmeal. All those foods are highly inflammatory because your body just went through all of this healing. I want your body to get super, super strong. So if you do introduce something, yeah, it might be annoying, but it's not going to cause that high-level pain flare that you had. And because we always follow a day of test with a day of rest, what it does is we introduce all of those foods that you're eating until now that nourished you, which quickly allows that inflammation to subside. So what might normally be a 12-hour, 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour pain flare is now an immediate pain flare, and your body quickly subsides. So we have a whole protocol for when you introduce a food that causes inflammation for you. And by the time you start testing those more highly inflammatory foods, your body's stronger. It hasn't been in that chronic pain for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And so it will still respond, but it's not going to be the nasty level of response that you're having right now. And I believe you said you had one more question.
Yeah, so when I have a client who I work with, when they eat beef, you just realize when they eat beef, if I give them a treatment after dinner and they eat beef, at that point, I can barely get a needle.
Okay, well that brings up a couple of things. So Sam works at a wonderful place here in our neighborhood, and he's talking about using acupuncture with somebody. Hey Sherry, what's going on? With somebody in the community, and whenever they eat beef, that he's having a hard time going in that acupuncture point. By the way, for anybody that's a planner, I'm a huge, well, even if you're not, I'm a huge fan of acupuncture. For most people, except for this one there. Acupuncture really helps to maximize the effects of planning, for sure. So it could be, Sam, I'm just throwing something out there, it could be that beef is highly inflammatory for him. It could be that he's eating beef too often. So I find that beef eaten more than once every 7 days is super high inflammatory. It could be that he was eating beef that was fed with corn. People that eat meat that's fed corn could be the issue, right? And then the other thing is that beef takes a lot of time to digest. I usually think that acupuncture after a meal may not be the best thing because it's probably better to do it before. So the good news is that you asked a question and it brings up a whole realm of possibilities, and that realm of possibilities allows us to better diagnose and treat the people that we're working with. And the more questions that we're asking, the better we are going to help the people that we work with. Because too often, and I'm sure everybody who's working in our medical model knows, you ask a question, you get one answer, that's the answer, that's it. It's never that easy and it's never that simple. So if we keep our thinking caps on and saying, the more data we gather, the more we can help the people we're working with and the more we can help ourselves. Thank you, Sam. Great question. Anyone else?
So if you're ready to start, so the whole testing protocol, right? The one barrier that has been keeping me from doing it is like, I feel like, well, it's too involved. I have to do it at a time when I'm on vacation or something. How cumbersome is it?
Okay, so my friend Gerardo, who is a wonderful professor here at City College, which is right up the street, asked a very good question. It's a question I get a lot, which is, and by the way, I notice I'm looking very wrinkly here, so if anybody's like in skincare, if anybody's in skincare out there, like give me a shout out, tell me what to do. Is the plan time consuming? Absolutely. But is being sick for the next 40 or 50 years and getting sicker steadily consuming? Absolutely. Do you need to do every day all at once? Absolutely not. So Gerardo's saying, should I do it on vacation? I'd say don't screw up vacation. But could you do 2 days a week or 3 days a week to gather the data to inform you and say, just like with Sam's patient, if you find out that the beef doesn't work for you, then don't eat beef when you're on vacation, right? Find the foods that work for you and slowly start building your foundation of the foods that work for you. This is not a race. But what it is it's the ultimate tool to help you define what works for you. So at the end of the day, you're 90 or 100 years old dancing on tabletops. It brings up another question, which I hear very often, which is, can't I just get blood testing, food testing? The problem with that is that allergy testing is notoriously inaccurate. Even if you're doing stuff like IgG, IgE testing, all it indicates is that your body may have been exposed to this food at one time. It doesn't mean that the food is an actual allergy. So a lot of times people will come up and say, every food I eat is on here, and they're freaking out. Some of those foods may work for you and some of those foods may not. So rather than have you reliant on a testing methodology, which can be very expensive, I'd rather give you the tools to, hey Amy, oh, hot yoga, yeah honey, I can talk about that. I'd rather give you the testing methodology to determine what works for your body, because here's the deal. Even if that food allergy testing you were getting was 100% accurate, in 6 to 12 months it's going to change. So, do you want to take time out for the doctor? Do you want to take time out for all the money that you're going to spend? Do you want to take the time rolling the dice saying, maybe this is accurate, maybe this isn't? All I know is, I was working with one family in Dubai. They had a young daughter, and they were very concerned about her. She had a serious health condition. They got 4 lab tests from 4 different labs between, the Middle East and London. It was all within 2 days, and it all said completely different stuff. That must have been $10,000 worth of testing. I mean, it turned out that we could use some of it, but we couldn't use some of it. Unless you're working with somebody that's highly trained, and I have to say, I'm pretty good at reading these tests. Even half the time, I'm like, this is just a crapshoot. I mean, it's garbage. So, is it at work? Yes. Are you worth it? Yes. Figure out 2 days a week where you can gather data for yourself. You don't need to do all 20 days at once, right? Let it take 2-3 months. But every time you find out what works for you, now you've got a foundational food. So you're mentioning eczema, right? So if in 2 weeks we've determined 4 days are low inflammatory for you and you have an eczema flare, what do? You eat what were called your friendly foods, the eczema flares. Now what's going to wind up happening, if you're in a constant eczema flare, your body's always fighting. it's going to be more sensitive to more foods. Hey, what happens if we lessen that eczema flare? Well, now foods that might have been mildly inflammatory are not going to bother you as much. But I have to say, our dear friend is also coming off of a very stressful time. And whenever we have heightened levels of stress, it directly affects our gut function. This is a time to be kinder to ourselves. For you folks that have read my books, you know you should be taking SAMe. For most folks, taking 600 milligrams when you're stressed is going to help to mitigate the effects of the cortisol so that you're not as much of a flare. So, Gerardo, for right now, SAMe, I'll give you some recommended brands, 600 milligrams, but it's not going to change the stress in your life, but what it's going to do is it's going to mitigate the physiological effects of the stress so that you're not always ready to flare. And what we're talking about with our work is how do we tame the flame? Is that flame our health being a chronic health issue? Is it our weight? We're packing on the pounds. Is it depression? We're ready to go into a state of depression. We have so much control over this. And all I do is give you the tools. I'm never going to tell you you need to eat vegan. Hey, Lainey, what's going on, sweetie? I'm not going to tell you to eat vegan or macrobiotic or paleo or keto. I don't care how you eat, frankly. But I do want you to eat the foods that work for your body with whatever diet it is that you're choosing to take. Now, Amy had asked a question. Honey, I'm going to tell you, Amy, I have written extensively about hot yoga. So, I love the way it feels. It's amazing. It's intense. You sweat all this stuff. It's a great community of people. But for many people, what hot yoga does is it actually increases cortisol levels, especially as we age. Now, how does this happen, right? It's fun. You're in a great community. How can this make you feel worse? Well, what winds up happening is, and I've measured myself before and after because I'm a data geek. So I've measured myself before a hot yoga class and after a hot yoga class, and I've lost 3 pounds in water weight. So it's addictive when you do hot yoga because you're like, yay, I'm skinny, this is great, I love hot yoga. But what winds up happening afterwards, of course, is that there's rebound water weight gain, right? You can't lose 3 pounds without your body saying, oh no, we're under attack. Quickly hold on to all the water that we can, hold on to our tissues and cells, because you have to think, when we were hunters and gatherers, if there was no water, and remember, a lot of times there was no water, there was no bodies of water, our body would start to hold on to water so that we wouldn't die, because water is a metabolic and cellular process. So when you're doing hot yoga, you're enacting that basic hunter-gatherer thing where it's saying, oh no, attack, hold on to water, we're in danger. So for some people, can hot yoga work? Yeah, maybe every now and then. For many people, what it does is it triggers a rise in cortisol. Now remember what we were talking about with cortisol? And I'll get a better pictorial. With cortisol, we're talking skewed hormones, yeast, thyroid function, and immune function. So the yoga, the Bikram yoga that's done at 105 degrees is probably too intense for most people. Remember, we're all individuals. There's some people that thrive on it. I've met people that are, instructors here in Harlem that have been doing instructing hot yoga for 10 years. Their health is amazing, their weight's amazing, everything's amazing. But if you find that it's not working for you, and I do find hot yoga to be more reactive, then I would say maybe stick with the 75 to 85 degree range and see how you're doing. Obviously, hydration is going to help, but whenever our body feels like it's stressed, it's going to respond in a way that's going to stress the rest of your systems out. That was such a great question. So you found that your weight spikes after hot yoga. Absolutely. The water's not going to help it, sweetie. It's not. If you wanted to, a lot of times, I use the metabolism plan to help people identify when exercise is causing them stress. Spinning could be another example. For a lot of times it can be as much as cutting back for 6 weeks. And then when you give your body a little break, and then maybe introduce hot yoga just once a week, or you do it once a week and you take some SAMe, you can mitigate that cortisol response. whenever we're seeing our body gain weight from exercise, and especially if your BBT drops, that's your body saying, this is hurting us, please don't do it. Now, I see Lyn D'Souza is on, and if you guys, I talk about over-exercise a lot, because there are very few of us that really have the genetics to be an uber athlete. Follow Lyn D'Souza on Instagram. The girl's a beast. We've been friends for how long, sweetie? Like before you were pregnant. This woman, CrossFit goddess. I'll say, like, for most people, CrossFit sucks. She's amazing. Her body loves it. So there's no such thing as a good exercise. There's no such thing as a bad exercise. You always want to train with good people. You want to train with people that are responsive to your body. You want to find role models like Lyn that are incredible. But it's about honoring your body, and you can get to your health and your weight goals and your body comp goals without injuring yourself. And really, that's what I'm all about. So, any other questions?
So when
Yes.
you talk about losing weight, is that water weight from the inflammation? How do we get to the fat loss part?
Okay, so when you eat, Amy, I'm glad you like that, sweetie. I know, hot yoga can be addictive. I'm like trying to find a place that does 75 to 85. There's a place here in New York that gets out of the way. It's so much fun. Hi, Michelle. What about fertility issues? Okay, so we can discuss that too. Oh, yeah, we got, good question, Michelle. Susan. No, Susan, unfortunately you can't change the foods, my love. You would need to get a consultation. Those are all foundational foods. I'm so sorry, sweetie pie. Okay, so water weight. There is water weight, and as if you ate bread at every single meal 3 times a day and loads of sodium, what you're going to find is you're going to have water weight. That's not actually what we're measuring on the plan. What we're measuring is, and the way we've been able to introduce grain carbohydrates is pretty cool. So there's a theory, excuse me, that for every molecule of a grain carbohydrate, it can attract 4 to 5 molecules of water. So theoretically, if you had a pound of pasta, you could put on 4 to 5 pounds of water weight. But there are many people that do well with grains without having that response at all. What we're measuring on the plan is not water weight. What we're measuring is a histamine-related response which causes water retention, which is different. So remember we said you have your capillaries? When you eat a reactive food, your capillaries actually leak fluid. That's what we're measuring. Especially because remember, we're doing super low sodium. On the plan, we're not even measuring grains and sodium the first few days. We're literally measuring the histamine response. So in most typical diets, would you be losing water weight? Absolutely. On the plan, we're measuring the histamine capillary-related response, which triggers water weight gain, which triggers a cortisol response, which is completely different. Can you be like somebody like Tara, who should eat sourdough pretty much every day of her life, and her body absolutely loves it? Absolutely. It's the same way you can say.
So, but once you get the water under control, then you can work on
the water's always under. If you're following plan guidelines, the water's always under control. It's always. If you're following.
I can eat any beans. Any beans, garbanzo, chickpea, lentil, anything with that.
And as a Latina, that's tough, right?
Huge. I eat like 2 pounds from like a teaspoon of lentils.
The same thing. I get a teaspoon from a tablespoon of hummus. That's my body, and beans might work really great for you. As we can say, from a Latina and from a former vegan, like to not be able to eat beans is crazy, but that's our body, and that, Dawn, is what's triggering the water response, but that water response stays on as inflammation because it's triggering cortisol, yeast, blah, 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 blah. So, yes?
How can you tell that in terms of the accuracy of the weight?
Okay, because I am a control freak. So Gerardo, I've spent years, developing this system. And Gerardo said, how can you tell? If you don't follow exactly what I tell you, every single day, I can tell you to a tenth of a pound, a 0.05 of a pound, why you should weigh what you weigh. So one day I'm working with this woman in Canada, and it didn't make sense. And she ate all of her friendly foods, blah, 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 blah. She gains 0.2, and I was like, I analyze every deal. Did you do that? Like, when you work with me, I'll ask you 5,000 questions if the data points aren't matching up to the data that I'm seeing. Finally, I was like, you had water after dinner, didn't you? She's like, yeah, I had 10 ounces, which accounted for the 0.2 weight gain. It is literally that precise. So, it's a very controlled environment. Is it that controlled for forever? Absolutely not. But in those first 20 to 30 days, if you follow the exact guidelines I give you, I will be able to pinpoint to you. We have some crazy rules. Never drink coffee after breakfast. Before breakfast or with breakfast is great. After breakfast, for most people, will cause weight gain. So we're going to leave that out as a variable. White wine tends to really slow weight loss. Red wine, enhance weight loss. Carbonated waters will F you up. Regular water will not. So there are all these things, these simple rules that are in there. Now, does that mean you'll never be able to drink carbonated water, or you'll never be able to have coffee after breakfast? Absolutely not. But when we're in this testing period and we're building your foundation, that's when you're going to see what works for you and what doesn't. And then you can say, oh, I'm in the mood for an espresso. You have an espresso, you gain 2 pounds. You're like, okay, Lyn was right. Or it's going to work for you. You're going to be great. This rule doesn't apply to me. So most of the rules I've developed have been gathered from, at this point, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And that's what's very different from the work that we do, is that a lot of times when you read a study, I was just reading this one study, Sam, I think I was telling you about it, and I was just like, you need to do this. This is amazing. We did this study on Finnish men that were in their mid-20s, and now everybody needs to do this. Well, I'm not in my mid-20s. I'm not a man. I'm not Finnish. And yet so much of the data that we hear is based on that. The whole thing with salmon and fish oils was based on Inuit people. Here's the deal. If you were from Alaska, you had one food source. If your body didn't adapt to being able to convert this food so that you could stay alive, you would die. And so some people died and some people lived. And the people that lived were able to utilize this as a maximal food source. Does that mean that it's going to work for us? Probably not. So same thing with the China study. The China study. So what's interesting about the genetics of being a vegetarian, 50% to 70% of people of African and Asian descent have the genetics to be a very successful, healthy vegetarian. Only 14%, by the way, of Northern Europeans do. Does that mean if you're a Northern European, you can't be a vegetarian? Absolutely not. Does it mean you should be a vegetarian if you are of African and Asian descent? No. But when we read studies like the China study, where they introduce massive amounts of animal protein to Chinese people, and they develop cancer, which, by the way, is an effed up study, does that mean that it's going to apply to you? Maybe not. Maybe. But it's always, you know, we live in such a quick fix world when it comes to, you know, these headlines. And I don't want to say it's fake news, because it's not. But your studies, somebody's funding them. Somebody has their own bias. You need to read who these studies are done by and on, and decide whether it can extrapolate to you. And then if it extrapolates to you, you still need to test it. So it's all good information. It's super fun to play around with. Obviously, anybody that's here that's following me is a super nutrition geek. And I'm always here to find, yeah, I love talking about this kind of stuff. Hey, Swan, dude, I haven't seen you since Balthazar. I'm so glad to have you on here. I mean, the broccoli soup instead of the carrot for the 3-day cleanse. No, my darling, you cannot, because that would skew protein and fat values. So once again, we can't make subs for things that are in the cleanse. You might want to email the office, info@lyngenet.com, LYNGENET.com. And then fertility issues, Michelle, I'm going to address that more tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to discuss more hormones, exercise, and depression, because these all go hand in hand. But I want to thank you. Before we finish up, Does anybody have any questions here? Oh yeah, we're good. You guys were, it was a small audience, but a lovely audience. Does anyone have any more questions?
Any,
Yes.
any good like scales that you recommend?
Yes, great question. So a lot of times people ask if like I'm being paid to endorse. Hi Vicky, what's going on, cutie? Can you skip beats during the cleanse? Yes, you can. You can, because I know you, and you can, and you're talking about specifically about the oxalates. Oh, thank you, Katie. You're the sweetest pea. Yeah, so if guys have oxalate issues, if you have kidney stone issues, you can skip the beets during the cleanse. That is one of the few things you can skip. And you can skip the shiitakes if you really, really hate them. But, you know, they're powerful cancer fighters. If you can stomach it, please do. Sorry, I was answering this and I forgot your question.
Oh, scale.
Scale. Okay, so my favorite scale, and I wish they would give me a portion of the money because I have like made them millions of dollars. Eat Smart, give me some love. But Eat Smart, you can order them on Amazon. They are amazing. You step on, you step off. You hold your breath, you don't. You could do like a whole step class on and off the scale. It's still going to say the same number, so it's very good. Just make sure that it's on a level surface because if it's on tiles, it'll give you uneven numbers. If sometimes there is like a 0.1% that it doesn't work out for, just email them. They'll send you a replacement right back. Eat Smart. They're pretty decent. They're like $25 or something. Like you can only order on Amazon. Oh, Michelle, did I say tomorrow? I'm such a mess. It's next Wednesday. So the first Wednesday of every month, we do our Wellness Wednesdays here. We have some great stuff coming next month. So next Wednesday at 6:30, I'll be speaking about hormones, inflammation, cortisol, and once again, the coronavirus, because it's something we're all concerned about. All right, folks. Mwah. I love you all. Thank you for showing up.